Um, well, welcome to this prelude to the AEE conference promotion session, and I'll throw over to Cherie to start.
I'll just start today by doing an acknowledgement of country. In the spirit of reconciliation, and inside the OutHaus acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Today we'll be talking about AEE. Me being an American and in the outdoor field has played a big part in my indoctrination into outdoor education. In the States, you have the choice between AOR or AEE, both very worthy organizations to be a part of, and really important that you kind of are a part of them in order to be successful in the outdoor space.
Perhaps, Cherie, before you go on, considering we have this large audience, you could alert the audience to a bit of a distinction between the two organizations, perhaps.
Yes.
Well, that's actually a great idea, because I was just going to ask, what was the AEE I know of? The other one I didn't quite catch what it was called.
So AOR is the Association for Outdoor Recreation and Education, and AEE is the Association for Experiential Education. So the AOR, or Association for Outdoor Recreation and Education, is very specifically geared towards outdoor recreation and education space, whereas the Association for Experiential Education is a bit more broad in the type of people who are involved in it. So it actually gives you a really good base of people to gather experience from, not just in the outdoor world, which I really like about AEE, is that you have people from all different walks of life and different aspects. So yeah, so just for me coming up, I was involved with both of them, or a member of both of them. AOR, or the outdoor one, was more of my focus, just because that was specifically what I was focused in. But AEE does so many great programs and different things that you can get involved in, and just kind of really expand your bag of tricks. It's a really great place to expand your bag of tricks. Yeah, so I think that's kind of overall of my experience. I know Pete will probably talk a little bit more about it, but we have inside the OutHaus did a session with one of the two, and have done a few, or we've done a session with AEE to kind of get our name out there and get experience with the international community, which is why we want to promote it today.
Yeah, thanks, Cherie. I guess my relationship with AEE specifically, and AOR, I lived in the States for a period of time, and during that time, I guess I attended both the conferences as part of a professional development experience. I was lucky that both conferences, the two times I attended them in the States, were actually almost separated by like a week, and they were both in the same location. And then I went back to the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, I think in 2016, and attended both conferences there as well. So I guess I've had a pretty long history with AEE. And then when we started the OutHaus in 2020, I guess, as Cherie alluded to, we reached out to the international community by way of both those organizations, particularly during the COVID pandemic. And both organizations reciprocated, because I would say the commonality between the organizations is they're really both into practitioners in the field of outdoor and experiential education, for want of a better word. They're really into those people collaborating and creating a great community. So the conference that's going on in Black Mountain, North Carolina, the end of this week. He's going to have over 800 delegates from 81 countries. And it's going to be a big melting pot. 115 of those delegates are actually beaming in online, which we are doing as part of the OutHaus. And we have had the dubious honor of being asked to present at that conference, which, considering it's their 50th conference, they've been putting these conferences on every year since 1972. I feel particularly chuffed that they asked a small organization in Australia to present at that particular conference. I have sort of focused this presentation a little bit for the Asia Pacific or the more online audience, because I think people who are probably attending the conference in person in Black Mountain, North Carolina are probably either there or making their way there as we speak. Hello, Lockie, how are you? We're a pretty small crowd, so we may as well just introduce ourselves and maybe just introduce yourself via the, I don't think we really need to be muted. We can just have a conversation.
Yeah, I'm not sure that 4 people actually makes up a crowd.
Lockie,
gathering.
Lockie, I don't think we can hear you. Unless you, that's a bit better, yes. Pete, well, why don't we start by talking about what our presentation is going to be on for the conference.
Okay, so when I contacted the AEE and put in a proposal for a presentation, I thought the OutHaus was doing a very unique thing. I thought we were creating a forum where people were able to collaborate and learn and perhaps interact in a virtual environment. And although I'm not suggesting that in any way that's as good as interacting face-to-face, it allowed that to happen. And I think particularly at the start of the pandemic, when everyone was locked down and we were doing these conversations once a week, I look back on that and I just can't believe we were putting them on once a week. But anyway, we would have these conversations once a week, and since March of 2020, and I guess over the period of the last 3 years of doing it, we have gathered a quite diverse and wide international audience. And whilst most of our audience is still based in Australia, I think we do connect with some people in the Asia Pacific region. One particular gentleman who beams in from Zambia now, and several people from the larger North American continent. I guess lots of people listen to our sessions in the recording because the time doesn't work for them for various commitments. And so I thought we were presenting a really unique thing. And so I guess the focus of the presentation that I'm going to do on Friday morning at 6:30 a.m. is going to be the history of Inside the OutHaus and why we actually began it. And then I guess getting an interactive response from the crowd to actually do some developmental work to try and, I guess, imagine the future for the OutHaus, going with the conference theme, so which is 50 and forward, reimagining the future. So I think the OutHaus is an organization that prides itself on perhaps being a bit proactive in doing things that are, shall we say, moving the sector in the right direction and perhaps staying ahead of the times. And we became aware that perhaps with people returning to work and spending more time in the field and going to, all of the present people besides Cherie were at NOAC. So I think the with people interacting in person and also interacting in the workplace and with colleagues in other environments, the need for weekly seminars definitely became a bit moot, and we've sort of decided to back it off to sort of about a month, monthly session, and but have it really more focused with a key presenter on a specific research topic. But the long-term goal of the presentation on Friday is to really get some large input from my audience to sort of find out, where they want us to go and what they want us to do.
Just a really good opportunity for us to get, what is it? It's like your own little think tank, essentially, to kind of work towards what people want to see in the future. And I think definitely we're going down this route of more opportunities for, I like the hybrid aspect of the AEE conference, is that, you can, even just learning how to present to people who are not only, like, if you're online and presenting, you're presenting to a crowd who may be there in person, as well as the crowd that's online, which is a very unique experience of trying to present to both sides of those, both of those crowds. And then same for the people who are there in person, trying to do a hybrid presentation too, where they can engage the crowd in front of them and people online. Has been, I think their AEE is doing maybe some breakthroughs with some of this conference that is, I think, really unique, and something that the outdoor field could definitely learn from.
And can I say, it allows people who are all around the world to actually interact with people who are in Black Mountain, North Carolina, and still experience the content and still have a conference experience, even though they are not actually physically in North Carolina, going to the 70s disco and various other things that are going on at the actual conference. So I think for people like me who, at this time of year and the costs and everything to get to North Carolina, it became prohibitive. But I think the option to be able to take part in the content and collaborate with people who are in the conference space is a real win. And I don't think it replaces face-to-face interaction, but I think it's a good second if you can't get to the face-to-face interaction. And I would almost go as far as saying that if you're not offering it in some form, I think in the modern, shall we say, space, then I think you're missing a large percentage of your audience. Because just from a cost point of view, like, to go to the actual conference in North Carolina, and unless your organization is sponsoring you to go to there, is, realistically, even if you go there cheaply, is probably from Australia no change out of, $5,000. And I think that's pretty conservative, really. You would have more information on those numbers, Cherie, but like, I just think that the hybrid option offers an option for people who can't get there in person. So I think from that point of view, but let's get into some conference content. As the OutHaus orator, I've made a few recommendations, which are coming up in the conference, and I was just going to alert you to them. I've really done it by day, and these aren't necessarily my favorite things, but I think they're things that perhaps I took away from my AEE experiences. I attended the conference virtually last year, and I found it, and because of my, as I was saying at the start, because of my lack of ability to stay awake between midnight and 5 a.m., and it was also an East Coast based conference, I found the time change was very difficult, but I found being able to interact with the people in real time in the conference space was really good. So starting on Thursday, November 10th, I've highlighted Michelle Cummings' session. For those of you who aren't familiar with Michelle Cummings, Michelle Cummings is a bit of a guru in the game play space, and she does some really amazing gameplay workshops, and then follows up with amazing debriefing. And this particular session that I've highlighted is effective debriefing tools and techniques by Michelle. I've attended 3 or 4 of Michelle's workshops in the past, and I attended a virtual workshop she ran at last year's conference. All amazing, just an amazing facilitator, amazing lady to listen to. My next highlighted thing still on Thursday is we had Jeff Byerline from Virastar Risk Management, but he's actually doing Jeff is doing a presentation on integrating environmental education into adventure education. I think it's something that we don't do well enough, and I'm very interested to hear what Jeff has to say in that area, because I think there's a really big lack of environmental education linked into adventure education curriculum. Without wanting to overburden you on Thursday, my last highlighted session on Thursday is my session, which is inside the OutHaus Zoom space, Nature Replace. And that for those in the Australian audience is 6:30 a.m. AEST, or if you're in AEDT, then 7:30 a.m. Australian time. Or I think it's 3:30 p.m. in Black Mountain time, East Coast. So moving to the next day, which is Friday, November the 11th, we've got some great people from the Asia Pacific region, people from Outward Bound Singapore, and they're presenting on an extremely important connection, incorporating environmental and sustainable education into outdoor education. Again, one of my pet things, but I think very interesting presentation. I think within the Singapore landscape, I think they've had to really work a lot on sustainability and environmental education because they don't have a lot of space. So I think those things come to the forefront when you're out of space. And there's a really, my other employer, the University of the Sunshine Coast, there's a really great University of the Sunshine Coast connection with the whole Singapore community. And for those who know Brendan Munge, he's very connected in the Singapore community, and they've run several student trips to Singapore to study outdoor education in that space. Second presentation on that Friday is Conflict is Good, Communication is the Key by Chris Ortiz. I've listened to Chris speak on 4 occasions now in various different forums. And he's an amazing presenter, and a bit like Graham Pringle, who I'll highlight just because he was a successful winner of the Outdoors Queensland Awards last week. I think he's just someone who's worked in the space for a very long time and has a very great understanding of how to resolve conflict with perhaps participants, clients who are more difficult. So I would highlight that. A bit of another shout out to USC. There's a person by the name of Deborah Ivy, and she is presenting on near-peer mentoring in experiential education. We do a lot of near-peer teaching and learning at USC, and so I just think I'm very interested in the whole near-peer, where students are actually teaching other students who are sort of third-year students are teaching first-year students, I guess is the USC model. I think it's a very interesting model, and I think that over the next couple of years, there's going to be some really interesting research coming out of the University of the Sunshine Coast around that particular area. 43 years of adventure therapy, experiencing the blessings and learnings of client therapeutic process. Michael Gass. Now, for anyone who has studied anything in this sector and read anything on therapy, Michael Gass, I just think needs no introduction. I am very tickled that he's going to be presenting, and I think it sounds like a very interesting topic. And number 5 on the list for the Friday is the element of choice and the paradox of risk. Tom Leahy, he has been around in the sector for a long, long time. And if you're into podcasts, I listened to a podcast called Vertical Playpen, ran by Phil Brown from High Five Adventures. A bit of a plug. They are one of the AEE conference sponsors. And he talks to Tom Leahy specifically about choice in that podcast, and he just has a very interesting perspective, a perspective which really throws on you the head the whole challenge by choice kind of concept. And that's the end of my recommendations for the Friday. Saturday, November 12th, a lot of people. Squeeze the Lemon. First presentation, getting more from the games that you play. Great title, great presenter. Jim Can has been doing it for a long time. Just a masterful games person. Again, flicking back to Outward Bound Singapore, because they're doing some work on facilitating in the virtual world, which I think is really relevant. At least it has been in my world, at least for the last, half of the last 2 years. So that's the second one. Third one is shifting perceptions of climate change through nature connection. I personally have a really strong belief that I think we'll teach better about climate change if we have a better relationship with nature. So I think this is particularly relevant. We had a group of people called Outdoor People for Climate Action inside the OutHaus last year. And so it's a topic that we have dealt with already. So number 4, do you have a healthy relationship with the outdoors? I think it's a very relevant topic for all of us who work, live, play, spend time in the outdoors in general. And I just wanted to give a big shout out to Denise Mitten, because she's an amazing lady and I just love her Twitter handle, which is Outdoor Mittens. So I just really wanted to mention that. Why does experiential education sit in the future of education? Sorry, where does experiential education sit in the future of education? I think a very relevant conversation for all of us. Tom Shorrock. Number 6, empathy, a cornerstone of social and emotional learning. I'm just a huge fan of practicing empathy in our facilitation. I think we need to teach it, we need to practice it, we need to embed it in what we're doing. And I just saw the title of that workshop, and I was pretty chuffed that someone's talking about Jeff Frigon. Enacting wild pedagogies in scholarship and practice. It's a round panel discussion led by Paul Stonehouse and Elizabeth Andre. I think it's, again, really relevant talking about wild pedagogies, particularly with the debates around the de-wilding of the wilderness that are going on right now, and all of the debate around that. So I think, and I'll just give a bit of a shout out to Liz, because a long time ago, Liz actually came as an exchange student to Griffith University and studied at the university that I attended. So long time connection. And last in my recommendations, a world of activities in 90 minutes. Lucinda Martinelli and Bryn Loddick Lucinda has presented inside the OutHaus previously, and Bryn runs an app called Kokori, which is an app which allows you to basically download experiential activities and games. And also is a conference sponsor, and I listened to her present last year, and she's amazing. And as I'm coughing a lot, someone else can talk for a bit.
Poor Pete. I guess I think a big part of this, and I've been writing a list kind of, is why we're talking about this now, is because we think it's really important that people in our community do get involved in the international outdoor community. And I guess I have a list of some of the main reasons why we think people should get involved and why we're so passionate about this. And one is the social and connection aspects of it. It's an opportunity for us to interact with the outdoor community around the world in real time, and to just get ourselves out there, because often as an island we're isolated, and maybe people don't realize what we have to offer, which is another one, is exposure for the outdoor community here in Australia, and the opportunities and what we can offer the world. I think it not only shines a light on the importance of the outdoor education sector in Australia, and kind of, we're like, hey, look at us. And then if the world is looking at us, then maybe some of our officials and people who are involved in the outdoor community will think, oh, well, if other people are paying attention, then maybe we should put a little more effort and passion into, into our outdoor education, and see it as a viable, as an important aspect of the education in bringing up the youth. Another one is learning. So it's an opportunity for us to learn new ways of doing things, new technologies, new ways to connect with our audience and clients and students. Once again, I will say, like, I think it's really cool what this conference is specifically doing, and maybe some of the others are doing it too, but I guess just knowing a little bit more about this one, I think it's really cool as we continue to learn and continue to grow. As outdoor educators, the idea that we do often need to bring that outdoor education into the computer and how we can then convey the same passion that we have in person through the computer, and so more people can have that experience. And then the last one I would say is AWE is really low. It's cheap for an international organization. It's only $75 to join as an individual. That's American, so about 116 Australian. There's not many international organizations, and ones that are so well known that you can join at such a low membership. So,
I'll just give a bit of a plug. If you go to their website, the amount of resources and learning stuff and webinars and book sites and people you can interact with is just massive.
So that in the chat, just so you guys know, there's the agenda in the chat, and I'll put the link.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's my spiel about why you should attend the conference.
I've got to say, Sherry and Pete, I have never been to an AE conference, but I've been aware of them for a long time. And some years ago, when I was still actually actively involved in outdoor ed, I did get to go overseas several times, and both to work and also to attend conferences. And you're absolutely right. Be able to spend some time in a much bigger community with people doing similar sort of work, but with perhaps different focuses, different kind of themes, whatever, it's fantastic. You come home inspired and reinvigorated to get on and do your thing, and do it better than maybe what you were doing it before. And I think that's really important. If I was still involved in outdoor ed more actively, I would probably be going. So there you go. Yeah. And Pete, you were talking about Jim Can earlier on, and the training wheels lady. What's her name? I forget her name.
Michelle Cummings.
Michelle Cummings, yes. Yeah, I've done a couple of her workshops as well, and also seen Jim Can live too. Did a workshop with him quite a few years ago, but fantastic, really inspiring people. Fabulous.
Yeah.
What about you, Lachlan? Have you do you know much about any of the speakers? Or I thought it was really cool. I didn't realize so many had Australian ties. So
Some of the bigger names. I guess yeah, it's a bit of both. Some I've heard of and some I haven't. So I was just having a look on the at the agenda you just linked through while you guys are talking actually. So thanks.
So, Pete, a couple of names I couldn't quite catch that you were saying before, I'm quite keen to look into. So the podcast you're talking about with the person talking about choice?
The person talking in the podcast is Tom Leahy, Lehay, I think he's spelled. Just hang on, I'll just pull it up.
And the podcast was Vertical something, you said?
The podcast is called Vertical Playpen. And it's the podcaster is a guy called Phil Brown. Okay. And he works for an organization called High Five Adventure.
I'll check it out. And the other thing you talked about too is I was just trying to look to see the sponsors. Is it Kokori?
Kokori, yeah. So that's Bryn Lottig, and I think she has a partner, but I can't off the top of her head remember her name. But when I go through this next, if my tech works, and I'll take you to their website and.
Yeah. How do you spell the name?
Kokori, I think.
Kokori. Okay.
Right.
Cool. I'll do some research. Thank you.
I'm gonna try and share my screen with you now, and we'll go and have a look at. I think one of the cool aspects of AEE for the virtual crowd. So the can everyone see my screen there? So this is a platform called GatherTown, which has been created by a couple of amazing people, John Lossey, Lossey, and Dan Miller. And it's effectively what they've done is totally amazing. So he has so the map that I'm walking through now, you can see my little avatar there. He has recreated in real form the exact layout of YMCA Black Mountain, which is where the conference is being held.
That's very cool.
It is, yeah.
So anyway, and you can obviously walk around and interact with things. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things for the international community. And then so you can go into this place called the Parker Cabin, and I'll just let John speak to the Parker Cabin.
Oh, we can't hear him, Pete.
Okay. So he's basically, what he's saying, yeah, it's because I'm going across two different things. What he's saying is basically he's designed this portal, the Parker Cabin, for the international community. And so he's got these 3 rooms, and I'll just go into one of them. And so in these 3 rooms, what is going to happen is our own David Maskell is going to load up presentations from the AEE conference at a time which is going to be more conducive to the international audience watching it. So basically, so you'll be able to watch presentations in Australia in sort of 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, as opposed to sort of 3 a.m. And obviously you won't interact with the live crowd that is at that presentation, but within the GatherTown space, my understanding is, in my conversation with John, you can actually interact with other international people who are in that space listening to that presentation at the time.
Yeah, I had a friend who went to a Round Square School conference some years ago, or a couple of years ago, and they used a very similar setup. I don't think it was the same guys, or I don't think it was called GatherTown, but same thing. You could, as a sort of a virtual presence, go and attend conversations, attend events, attend activities. He said it was extraordinary. People, mostly school kids from all over the world getting together and chatting in these sort of virtual spaces. It was fabulous.
So my avatar has just gone and logged on to the Kokori sponsorship page in the GatherTown space, and you can see how it's taken me now to their website. And so from their website, you can obviously get information, you can talk to them, you can download resources, and obviously within that space, if those people are manning their booth, for want of a better word, then you would actually able to talk to the people who are Kokori. So that's, and there's 2 rooms full of sponsors. Anyway, I won't go on too much, but you can so you can get a physical conference map. So this is a physical map of the Black Mountain site at YMCA in North Carolina, and then the map next to it is the virtual conference map. And so then it gives you this map of this GatherTown space. You can ride around on scooters, you can teleport. It's very much an area for the tech geeks, but in terms of, I found GatherTown was a great way as an international person beaming in last year to the conference that was only virtual. I found it really useful. And then you can go faster when you're on a go-kart, except I didn't get on one. Yes, I did. And
it's really speaking to the retro side of, like, this makes me think of Zelda, like old Zelda games.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to stop sharing now because I'm done with that. Right. So it's a really like it's probably not that relevant if you're in North Carolina. I don't see that if I was attending in person in Black Mountain, I'd spend loads of hours in GatherTown. But I think what I liked about it as a virtual attendee last year was I could actually listen to a presentation, then go to GatherTown and have a personalized conversation in GatherTown with the presenter. So I found that quite cool.
Yeah.
Hey Pete, how much did that enhance your feeling of not being at the conference in person, but you're still there in this virtual world? How did that change?
I'll answer the question this way, Lachlan. I think if you've chosen to attend the conference virtually, I think you need to embrace the virtual experience. So you need to take on, I'm going to be up between midnight and 8 a.m. for 3 days in a row, because that's me attending live presentations. And you just need, I think you need to embrace that rather than kind of going, well, I'll attend some things. So I struggle with that, as I said before, but I think in answering your question, I think the GatherTown space was a lifesaver for the virtual attendee, because it allowed you to actually interact with people who were on the other side of the world in a one-on-one kind of environment. And as I said, it's not as good as talking to them in person. But I think it's a good second.
Yeah, of course.
Is how I would describe it.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that this is in many ways mirroring like a precursor to, hopefully this idea about this metaverse, what will that look like? And this is like, you know, a simplified version of, you know, Zuckerberg's ideas about what a metaverse represents. You know, and that ties in really nicely with this idea of, you know, experiential learning and, you know, a virtual experience, and yeah, what people facilitate and what will the future of technology facilitate.
And I think that, I think as the world progresses, I think we need to really look at the sustainability of this type of model. You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
because here is 4 people, and we're having direct conversations with those 4 people, and yet we're all in different parts of the world. We're all in Australia, but we don't have to be. And no one has jumped in a car or jumped on a plane or driven anywhere. And if, you know, and yet we're having what I would suggest a learning forum. And then you can go and cook dinner for your partner and pat your dog and be with your child and all of those things. And I, as I said, I don't think it's a replacement, but I think it's a really great value add.
Yeah, it's another tool to, like, you know, it's technology that is advancing the 21st century. So
yeah. Yeah, so I mean, that's really all I have in terms of talking about the conference, I guess. And I know everyone in the room are busy people, but I guess I wanted to give a bit of a plug for the AEE Asia Pacific Conference. They are hosting a regional conference in the Asia Pacific region. It has been rumored, well, it actually has been confirmed. If you go to the AEE website, you can confirm that it is in fact in Singapore in mid-June next year. So put that in your calendar if you're in the Asia Pacific region, because I spoke to someone about it and they said, I'll go to Singapore. There you go.
I will say too, this may not be the experience of you guys, but one thing that like you said, the whole metaverse idea, or this whole idea of online stuff. I've been an outdoor educator for 14 plus years. And now I do online admin for an outdoor company. Because of course, as soon as I had this little joy, it becomes very difficult to go into the field. And so that's one thing that I think my experience has been with this. When I when Pete found me for Inside the OutHaus, it's a way for me to still engage with the outdoor community. And that's been so big for me, and so big that, you know, my job is now online, so I can stay home with my daughter, but I can still be involved and still, you know, do what I'm passionate about while raising a family. And I think that's one really big benefit for stuff like this, international conferences and stuff, as we continue to grow, is the experience of people who don't have as many opportunities once you start a family, whether you're male or female. So I will say that's definitely been a highlight for me, to be involved in Inside the OutHaus. The idea of being able to go to an international conference, as well as, you know, all the cool things that come with learning online and experiencing everything online.
Yeah. Well, I think we could probably wrap the session up. And again, AEE 10 through 13 November, the end of this week, in Black Mountain, North Carolina, or virtually or via hybrid. Go to their website. The notes are in the chat. Thanks, Cherie, for doing all that. And it's a pretty engaging conference in whichever way you're attending, hybrid or online.
Pete, do you know what how much it costs to attend online?
I do, because I paid for it. It is, if you're an AEE member, it is a little over $100 US.
Pretty cheap, really.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I mean, you know, you're obviously not getting cups of coffee and meals. But,
Biscuits.
Oh, I don't know.
I like the biscuits. Yeah. You've got your cup of coffee there, Mark?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So like, and as I said, I when I started this, I don't for the life of me think it replaces you know, us interacting in person, but as Cherie, I think, rightly points out, when people have busy lives and they've got 10 other things going on, I think it's better to have some collaboration and some interaction with the professional community that you work in, rather than none.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good point, Pete.
And we're in a big state, you know.
Yeah, like even in the state of Queensland, I mean, you know, it's incredibly difficult to interact with people in the far north if you're not interacting online.
Yeah. We found, Pete, just going back to COVID and the webinars that we started, or the online meetings we started around that same time as OutHaus started, is that, you know, we've developed better and closer relationship with a number of people that we probably never would have been able to do had it not been for being online.
Yeah, well, I'll second that. I met people who I've never actually met in person. Perhaps I met quite a few of them when we were down at NOAC.
Gotta go. Bye.
See you, Lockie. Thanks for coming, man.
See ya.
Ciao.
And you know, and I think that's a win for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think it really, I guess the other thing which I think an online conversation does is it really levels the playing field, because you really just need an internet connection to actually take part in the conversation.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think one of the beauties I've learned inside the OutHaus is we have, you know, we've had some really, shall we call them, well-known, impressive presenters, but we've also had people who just work as instructors in the field, and I think the value of all those people interacting in a forum is really outstanding, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm quite intrigued by how the AAE is going to handle the combining online presentations for a live audience and an audience beaming in, and just how the guy John Lossy, without wanting to plug him too much, he runs a company called Into the Wisdom. And he's looking after all that stuff, is
he? He is their tech person. So check him out.
I will, because we've done our awards online for the last 3 years, as you know, and next year we are definitely going back live again, but we also intend to combine it online, and just not entirely sure how that's going to work yet.
Well, John had a conversation with me which went for, I think, 1.5 hours last week, where he talked about, because as you would know, because you're much more experienced with the tech side of things than I am, the difficulty is if you have people sitting in the room in North Carolina, they can't interact as well as someone who's sitting in their office with their Zoom camera, because they can't take part in little activities that you may run, because there's one screen. There might be 3 cameras, but there's one screen, and they're all just looking at that. So he talked to me a lot about technology around things like Mentimeter, where you have people log in on their phones, and then they can take part in like questions and surveys and polls, and they can feel part of the interaction as well as listening to the talking head. And although it's definitely not the same as you actually presenting in North Carolina, it started me thinking, you know, the way you need to engage both those audiences, the live audience and the beaming in audience, and you need to have strategies to do those two things.
Yeah, and there are a number of tools, as you just indicated, that gives you, creates options.
Yeah, sure.
It's definitely an outside of the box thinking, which is, you know, what we want to promote is we want to promote ways to think outside of the box. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pete,
Yeah.
um,
I gotta go first.
well, I was gonna say we might want to. Did we end the recording already?
I haven't ended the recording. I will end it now.
What to do?
Do you want to say? Do you want to stop